It is, as you can see, a rather chilly morn. It's actually quite beautiful. Look at that, it's really nice. And on this chilly morn, I just quickly address a point that Simon made in a video where he was talking about speech and how words don't intrinsically have any meaning. I'm sort of paraphrasing and making it sort of simple. Don't have any meaning, and they're just relationships to objects. The sort of point was that, you know, if I come up with a word, let's say squeeble, I come up with the word squeeble for one of these things here, which is a tree. And we all agree that we use the word squeeble for tree because we don't have a word for that thing. Then squeeble becomes the word for tree. Squeeble intrinsically itself has no inherent meaning. Literally just made up, as are all of the words that we have. And the object itself, the tree, does not have a name in the real world. And so all we have then is an object that is nameless, given a sound that we produce, squeeble, which if enough people adopt will become the name for the object, because the object itself doesn't have a name. So it's literally just a relationship between, it's just tagging something onto something. That's what language is. We invent a tag and hang it on a thing and say this thing is now that tag. And it can be an object or a concept. So he's absolutely right in that. That's what language is. And you know, I might pronounce that word differently depending on where I've wandered to. So I might say cat or ket or cut or whatever variation of that you want. And if it's near enough to the original word, then everybody will understand. If it's not, then you just ask for confirmation. Is that, you mean cat? It reminds me a bit of in Snatch, where they go to buy the caravan from the Pikeys, Brad Pitt, and he invites them into the caravan and says, "Shall I like dogs?" Sorry? "Shall I like dogs?" "What do you mean?" "Dogs, like dogs." "Oh, dogs. Yeah, I like dogs." So, words are just labels that we tag onto things. But I've been through this before with nama rupa, name and form. They're just a bunch of forms, and it's just a bunch of names. And you just create a relationship between a form and a name and say, this is that thing, this is what I'm going to call it, and I'm talking about this. So, that's that. And none of these forms are actually forms, you know. So, like, you're saying that's a tree. We've been through that one as well. The other thing that I said I was going to do a video about at some point was layers, which comes fittingly because yesterday I was watching a video about of Federico Fagin, who's a materialist physicist who sort of now is putting forward the notion or the theory that consciousness is the most fundamental thing. Very interesting. Oh, the lake's frozen over. Lake, the pond. And he's sort of talking about physics. He's relating it all to physics and particles, and how particles are non-existent really. They're simply activity in a field, and that the field ultimately is a field of consciousness, and he has his reasons for believing that and presenting that as his idea. And it's in order to simplify physics and the mysteriousness of consciousness, the hard problem, and in order to unify quantum physics and general relativity, which is something that physics is having a little bit of a struggle with. And he claims to have achieved this through his theory. Whether he has or hasn't, whether you agree with that, is entirely your business. Lots of theories out there. Go and think about the ones you want and accept whatever you want from them. Believing things is not really my thing. I just like to hear many things and come up with a sort of, where do I stand on this position generally kind of thing, so that I never actually believe anything if I can help it, but instead just collect information and then navigate the world based on which information I'll put my trust in, my confidence in. But levels, he said something about referring to this, and I've said this before. When I stand here, this is the problem that we have as humans. I stand here and I look out at the world here, and I think, yeah, this is the world, this is what it looks like. And everything makes sense to me on this level, right? Trees are the right size, whatever that means. And, houses and things we build to suit ourselves, but nature seems to be on the right size for me. Everything's just the right size. If I were an ant, a tree wouldn't look like a tree. I would have no conception of what a tree looks like, an entire tree. Let's take it as read that there is an entire tree. But an entire tree would look to me like it just wouldn't make any sense. I would be extremely small. And if I were the size of, I don't know, a galaxy, then a tree would be meaningless to me. It would be like you trying to imagine a mitochondria in your body. It's like we know they're there, we sort of got a little diagram in our heads from biology what they look like, but so there are all of these levels, and for humans to be so arrogant as to say this level that I am now observing everything at is the right level, this is the way things look, this is the way the world is not obviously stupid. All of those levels are relevant. Molecular level, atomic level, they're all relevant. And there's the sort of point. And I think Rupert Spira has said something thus as well. Oh, that's quite nice. Look at this. That lovely the way all that grass lights up in the sun or the frost. Rupert Spira says something about this as well, that if you were the universe, let's say the universe was conscious, right? It doesn't require a body, it doesn't require a brain, all of that kind of thing. Federico Fagan says evidence of this would be if a tree was conscious, and we have evidence that trees do things that we can interpret as conscious. So, and recently, Sabine Hossenfelder, which rather surprised me, and also did a video about how the universe might be conscious, because consciousness or the universe might be a brain, let's put it that way, because thinking is really only sending information back and forth. The brain has fibers that sends information back into the very area that they came from, the very areal that they came from. It has interlobular fibers that go between the lobes. It has interhemispherical fibers, U fibers that go between the hemispheres, through the corpus callosum, for example. So the whole brain is made up of fibers so that it can send information back and forth to itself. If that's all thinking is, or requires that information is sent back and forth, then the filaments in space that we have between the galaxies, where we can mark clusters of dark matter, and where galaxies seem to gather in knots along these filaments. If the filaments were sending information back and forth at light speed or faster via, for example, tachyons or neutrinos or whatever, then that is just information being sent back and forth to the structure, the architecture itself, and therefore it's feasible that it could be in the process of thinking. But if the universe, this thinking universe, were able to observe reality, it would observe reality on all of those layers. This is the sort of point. Meaning, this is not reality. Reality would be all of those layers all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. None of those layers are the layer. The molecular layer is not, well, this is it, it's molecular. No, it's not, because there's an atomic layer. And there are other layers on top and beyond that. And it would be, to see reality as it is, would be to observe all of those layers all at once. None of those layers are the correct layer. And yet everything around us is all of those layers all at once. It's just that we can't observe them. We're not equipped we're not equipped with the senses to be able to observe, say, the vastness of the universe, but we can build sensors to do that, which is why we have an idea of how vast the universe is. Just as we are not equipped to observe the molecular layer, as Simon said also in a video. We don't see those things. Of course we don't, but we can build machines that tell us what that looks like, and so we know it's there. What use is that to us, he would say? Well, that's what we are, would be my answer. And maybe you're missing something, maybe we all are missing something in our machinery, in our architecture, because we are so preoccupied with that part of ourselves that we miss the other part, the intrinsic, the subjective part. And this is what Federico Fagin was saying, was that the problem that we're having in physics at the moment is bringing these two parts together, the internal and the external. The things, there's a sort of a coming together at the moment in science and in physics, because these two things don't fit together and don't make any sense, in exactly the same way that quantum physics and general relativity aren't fitting together and making any sense. And it will be the bringing together of these two things that will bring a true advancement. I think it was there was a quote by Tesla to the effect of, once we get to bring consciousness into physics, then everything will advance, beyond our wildest dreams. And we've had people doing that in the forms of meditation and so on and so forth, experiencing it in the world. And I think that there's possibly a key that we are missing in science and physics, and it's all very good. I love science and physics, and it's fantastic. And Occam's razor, the simplest thing, get rid of everything that's not necessary, all of that kind of thing. Only things that we can prove, not things that we can't observe, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but how are you sure that you're not observing something that you haven't bothered to observe? People have been walking around for millions of years through the air, right, and just thinking that they're walking through nothing. But then someone comes along and finds out that actually it's a bunch of molecules, you're walking through a gas. They couldn't have known that. They didn't observe it properly. It's not there, there's nothing there. No, it's your failure to observe that made you believe that there was nothing there. So that's why I'm very unsure about things, and I don't like to say I believe things and so on and so forth, because I don't trust humans that much to be that observant about things. Even the most obvious and ridiculous of things we found out in the meantime, it was staring us right in the face. So, layers. Everything, there are no layers. Everything is one whole, seems to be one whole thing, all fitted together. It's not as if a molecular layer tacks onto the next layer and then that tacks onto the next layer. That isn't the way it is. It's a gradient from the very most fundamental thing to whatever the largest structure is. And there are no layers. It seems to be one whole thing. This was Federico Fagin's conclusion, that what we are observing is the one. There are no component parts, it's just the one, expressions of the one. And I think that's an interesting and valid point, and something that we should get to grips with, because lots of our science is not making sense from any other point of view. Have a frosty Sunday, but get out and enjoy some nature and some sunshine. It's lovely. And be free.